Welcome into episode 230 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network. Sources Say is, as always, presented by our good friends at Justice Dental. Visit one of their two Lexington locations. That's on Blazer Parkway and Wellington Way by scheduling an appointment online at justicedental.com or by calling 859-543-0700. You can even send a text message to one of their friendly team members at the same number to ask a question to make an appointment. Now is a great time to schedule your dental cleaning. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Justice, and their team strive to provide you with good oral health and a comfortable environment. The Justice Dental team looks forward to seeing you soon. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very happy to be joined once again by my guy, KSR's own Zack Geoghegan. Zach, I appreciate you. Well, you didn't really have a choice. I'm telling you that you are going to be doing this show with me, but I appreciate that you are on with me nonetheless.
Yes, forced against my will here up in Springfield, Massachusetts. Should we have made the bed first? Is that going to be a poor look?
It is what it is. They're going to be grateful that we've.
It's a hotel. I never make my bed at a hotel.
Yeah, it is what it is. Here to celebrate an absolutely unbelievable must-win situation for the Kentucky Wildcats, a victory over the terrible, disgusting, no good Tennessee Volunteers, 63-56 down in Knoxville. Zach, we're not down in Knoxville. We are up here at the Hoop Hall Classic in Springfield, Massachusetts, seeing some future Wildcats get after it. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit, but can't go a second further before we discuss the reason why our listeners are here. A not beat down, but a much needed victory down in Knoxville.
Yeah, feel good win all around. All the post game shower or water dumps and the Chin Coleman crying on the bench with Tyler Ulis and Lance Ware talking his stuff the whole time. It was just a great win all around. Kentucky's offense was not that great, but the defense was probably the best they've played all season long. They completely dominated a Tennessee team that was one of the best rebounders in the country. They stood no chance there. They hit no threes, essentially. Kentucky made it a point to, nip that in the bud and make sure that wasn't going to be an issue. And Kentucky, I don't believe, Stephen can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there was many UK fans that even made it in. And still, all those the Kentucky players still found a way to come out at the end there, despite that horrid 8-0 start that honestly made me think that this was going to be a 40-point beatdown. So massive credit to all the players there, Coach Cal and the staff for somehow pulling out that win. And we'll see if it was the season-changing win, but, at this point in time, it sure was.
Yeah, we're still in wait-and-see mode, and it's fair to be, not ready to just go all in with this team.
Cautiously optimistic.
Considering where things have been, it's totally fair to say, great step in the right direction. We're glad it unfolded the way it did, but it's also okay to still be like, all right, well, it's not perfect. Still don't have your starting point guard. We'll talk about that and the impact that made. But all in all, a lot to be excited about, a lot to hang on to. It was a step in the right direction for a change after a Tuesday night in Rupp Arena that I'll remember for a very long time, unfortunately, because it was the most embarrassing loss that I can remember in quite some time. Just unacceptable loss against South Carolina. For them to turn it around against a team like Tennessee, ranked number 5 overall, number 1 by a long shot in terms of defensive efficiency. I think holding opposing teams to 20% from 2, easily far and away number 1 in college basketball. So to get a team like that considered a national title contender, to get them on their home floor on Chris Lofton night. They have Candace Parker there, Allen Houston there, honoring all of these
brought the football coach out too.
These Tennessee legends and the Tennessee football coach. To do that on their home floor, unbelievable win. Very excited for it. I want to talk about what you kind of mentioned, just kind of the game plan that Kentucky put together, because we talked to Bruiser Flint on Friday, and he talked about what the Kentucky game plan was, because everybody focuses on the defense and how they only allow, I think 3 teams going into this game had scored at least 60 points on the Vols, Kentucky being the 4th. That's what they're known for. You just don't score a ton of points against them. And I know that's kind of a point of conversation going into it. Just how is Kentucky going to score points? And Bruiser Flint was very just very honest and was like, that's not our focus right now. Our focus is on making sure that we attack them on the glass and win that rebounding battle, while also holding them from three. That in their best performances and when they have lost at their best, they have made a ton of threes and have been really efficient from deep. And at their worst, they've missed a ton of threes. So those have been were the two main points of emphasis going into the game. Score points however you can, focus on the offense, as is, but make sure that you win those two things. And for all the criticism that they got this week about how these coaches don't game plan and don't scout and all that stuff, it was very refreshing to see the game plan go exactly as planned and work out as successfully as it did, Zach.
Yeah, and the additional part of that is that over a third of Kentucky's points came from the free throw line. So that's those are the three things there. They stopped Tennessee from hitting threes. They dominated one of the top 5 rebounding teams in the entire country. I mean, absolutely dominated. I believe it was 43-23. We're looking at the stats here. So nearly doubled them up. And then Kentucky goes 22 of 25 from the free throw line, which was honestly, in my opinion, that's the most impressive part of that entire game, was somehow they managed to get to the line so many times and be as efficient as they were. And I think a lot of that just has to do with kind of how slow I thought Tennessee was. Not necessarily with their pace. I thought their pace was a little bit slow, but I just thought their players themselves were just slow and they couldn't keep up with not even necessarily Kentucky's fastest players. Like Chris Livingston he had a couple of times where he just beat his man off the dribble, got in the middle of the lane and went up and got some buckets. And obviously Tennessee's bigs aren't very fast either. So I just don't think that Tennessee, it was just not a good matchup for them when I try and look at it right now. Like they were just too slow against everyone on Kentucky. And especially when Kentucky had those two shooters out there, they just couldn't keep up with them. And that just created all these extra open lanes and, the ability to get to the free throw line and really attack the rim and get Tennessee out of position more often than not. And I think what I just talked about there and then what you talked about, those are the 3 or 4, I guess, main takeaways from that game, is how Kentucky had a game plan and clearly it worked.
So speaking of that game plan, they were had to adjust on the fly a little bit with Xavier Wheeler missing with a shoulder injury, something that Kentucky tried to keep under wraps leading up to the game. It was very successful. Everybody was surprised during the pregame warmups when the ESPN showed an update from him. It said Xavier Wheeler questionable with a shoulder injury. Everybody said, where the hell did that come from? He was later declared out, missed the entire game, and with Kaysen dealing with back spasms. And yes, as we saw, he was dealing with back spasms. Let's not get into our tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. Oh my God, he quit on his team. Let's stop all that garbage. He clearly was dealing with back spasms, had to come out several times and get stretched out, worked out. He was seen back in the tunnel working out with Brady Welch doing like hot yoga or something. It was hilarious.
Pushed the camera away too. That was funny.
But so clearly shorthanded, and that was definitely a scary sight and thought going into this game. But Zach, it forced Kentucky to change the way it played. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, that it was definitely not ISO heavy, dribble the air out the ball, kind of offense, wait until you get late in the shot clock to get things rolling and initiate the offense. There was almost like this sense of, okay, we don't have our primary ball handler. We don't have our initiator and playmaker. We got to do this stuff on our own and kind of adapt in a different way. And it kind of forced them to initiate earlier and focus more instead of putting the ball on the floor, put a greater emphasis on ball movement and moving away and setting screens, floppy action, running different sets and, coming off screens and trying to get these open looks, putting more shooters on the floor, Antonio Reeves and CJ Frederick on the floor together. Honestly, this is the offense that I think Kentucky fans have been asking to see. And it's not that Xavier Wheeler can't run it. And I'm convinced that actually this is more proof that we need to be running like this and let Xavier be the playmaker in this style of play where you get things rolling earlier and the ball movement's better and all that. That's what we've been stressing till we're blue in the face for months now. But it was a breath of fresh air to see the offense, 63 points, didn't shoot great, but still there's something to hang on to in that regard, that the offense just seemed to work better than we've seen in the past, Zach.
Yeah, I don't think this game was an indictment on Xavier because, like you said, Kentucky still only scored 63 points. And really the offense, it was just a little bit better in terms of how it was just flowing, like you said, with the ball movement. I thought that was really what changed things. But my biggest takeaway from Wheeler missing is what it forced Kentucky to do more than anything it forced Cal to play Reeves and Frederick at the same time, which, like you said, that's just what everyone's kind of been asking for. The lineup with those two, Wallace, Jacob, and Oscar. I believe if Sean Vinsel, that is his name, right?
Yep.
He posted something that's said that was they went from 20 possessions with that group to 43 or something, or maybe it was Evan. I can't remember pronounce. How do you say it?
Mayawa?
Everyone,
Mayaka?
I feel like most people probably know who we're talking
Yeah.
about. But one of those two noted that group only had 20 possessions all season long, and then had another 23 in just the game against Tennessee, and that's what we got to see more than anything. And that group did produce. I believe they played. If they played 23 possessions, that's a good chunk of the game together. And obviously, it yielded positive results. There was a stretch where when Cal took that lineup out, where they went on scoring droughts, then they came back in, and the offense just kind of resurged again. So I think there was definitely something to that. I believe, Tennessee was probably caught a little off guard as well without having Wheeler out there. They probably game planned a little bit for him to be there. So maybe you can chalk up to that as well. But I do think ideally this kind of changes how Kentucky just approaches the rest of the season and how they use Wheeler. Because I still think you need a guy like him out there because he's very, very important on defense. And, he's going to be the spearhead guy there. He still is, he's been doing a lot better on his catch and shoots. He still provides a lot of really valuable things out there. And even over the last few weeks, he's been a very solid player. He hasn't been bad or anything like that. So it's tough to say, if Kentucky is better or not without Xavier Wheeler. I would say the answer is probably no. But ideally, we get to see more games moving forward where Wheeler is not playing 37, 38 minutes, and maybe he gets cut down to 25. I think that might be more of his sweet spot. I'm not sure I want to entirely say maybe bring him off the bench, but I think there's definitely moments where you just need Kaysen and those two shooters out there just because the offense is just going to flow a lot better. So if they're ever struggling for points, I think that's the offense or the group you need to put in. If the defense obviously still worked, but I genuinely believe that a lot of that was just Tennessee. Just obviously they missed a lot of shots, 21 from 3, but they were just slower than Kentucky. And I think that's what it came down to in that regard.
Yeah. And it's such a tricky situation because you knew as soon as this game unfolded the way it did that the conspiracy theorists, the fans, that would be just a huge point of emphasis talking about what, whether Xavier needed to play and how many minutes he needed to play and whether this team was better off without him and those type of things. And it creates an unfair situation for him because it wasn't his fault that he got hurt. And yes, they did win without him. And it creates the hot take thing. But I do think there's a middle ground with both of it. Like, I don't think this is why Xavier Wheeler doesn't need to be playing at all. I don't think that's necessary. And I also don't think
and that's just not going to happen either.
Yeah. And there's also on the flip side of, Xavier needs to be playing he's just fine, no room for criticism whatsoever. People that are just going to defend him no matter what he does. I don't think that's a realistic thing either. I think there's a happy medium with that where it's okay to acknowledge his flaws and say that this isn't where he's put in a positive situation and put in positions for success and to thrive. But while also saying that, he does have his limitations and he would be better off used in various situations. And I think that's exactly what we got to see. I hope that Cal saw this game and saw the way the offense ran with everybody kind of working together as a cohesive unit instead of one person initiating things and having everything else go around him. I think that is a pretty fair assessment of how it unfolded and definitely gives Cal something to think about nonetheless.
And I think we learned a lot more about Antonio Reeves, and I think we need to UK needs to find more ways to put the ball in his hands where he can create the offense, because I think just him, getting to his spots in the mid-range just makes things a lot easier for everyone. It's just going to open space everywhere across the floor even if he's taking those mid-range jumpers, from 14, 16, 18 feet, he's just bending the defense enough that he's not exactly going, a stellar passer, but just him having that threat out there is going to open things up for guys like Kaysen and CJ on the wings there. So I would like, and if you're going to give the ball more to Antonio, it has to come out of someone else's hands. So I think that's where you start to find that happy medium of maybe taking the ball out of Wheeler's hands a little bit more and then give it to Reeves a little bit more as well. Or I think I said that wrong, but you all know what I meant there. So give the ball to Reeves a little bit more and let him create, because I think that was kind of what it came down to for Kentucky. Reeves, I don't see what he's had here looking at our stats, but I believe he might have led the team. Jack's pulling it up right now. 18 points, yeah. And he only shot 4 for 10, but he went 8 for 8 from the free throw line. So he finds ways to create offense that Xavier Wheeler can't, even though they're kind of playing different positions out there. But having him find ways to create more offense, I think that's a good starting point, and I think that's definitely something that Kentucky's going to be doing more of moving forward.
And you bring up Antonio Reeves and CJ Frederick a little bit earlier, but those two, we've been waiting for them to both step up in big games and make shots. And again, the efficiency wasn't necessarily great for either of them. 4 for 11 for CJ, 3 of 9 from 3, and then Antonio was 4 for 10 from the field and 2 for 6 from 3. But
10 of CJ's points from the first half too.
But they were timely to start the game. Antonio hits the first big shot to break that long drought. Kentucky goes down 8-0 and really desperate for any type of offense whatsoever. And Antonio was the one to break that little mini rut. And then you have CJ go for 8 straight points on his end, and he finishes with 10 in the first half and then finishes with 13 overall. Very timely shots. And then Antonio Reeves closed out the game, I think 13 in the second half and 8 in I think 8 of the team's last points or whatever it was, or 8 of 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
But very, very much came up in the clutch for Kentucky, hit the timely shots, hit the big shots to seal the win. You needed that. That's what we've been waiting for. You need I really appreciate it, and we talked about this during the game a little bit. I love seeing CJ miss shots in transition, but almost have heat check moments where like he was jacking up some stuff from 30 feet, 20, 26, 27 feet, maybe not that far, 25, 24 feet, whatever it
close
is.
to range.
But yeah, he was launching with no regard for humanity. Just like, all right, I'm getting my shots up and I'm gonna feel good about it. And yes, some of them weren't very timely and probably could have, didn't have to take that quick of shots in transition. But I like that confidence. We need to have him have heat check shots, because that means that he had been making shots earlier and was feeling himself, getting a little bit confident. Look, he's a career 47% three-point shooter. Antonio Reeves is a 40% three-point shooter on the career. You cannot let those guys just be relegated to the bench and not utilize what they bring to the table. They are elite at what they do, and you have to play through the misses. You have to play through some of their miscues and utilize them to the best of their abilities and what they bring to the table. And that's as pure shot makers and scorers, especially in Antonio's case, as a three-level scorer. Kentucky has to figure out ways to get them utilized, and to have CJ, especially the kind of cold streak he was before his injury, for him to come back with back-to-back games. I think he had 12 in the last game or whatever it was, and then 13. I mean, you're starting to piece things together for him, and that's that's so huge down the stretch when you get Xavier Wheeler back and the team gets back to full strength. Having those two on either side of you, hopefully we see them on the floor together a little bit more, but that's exactly what this team is needing.
Yeah, these CJ and Reeves likes to take some of those transition threes as well. And I kind of expressed my frustration when we were watching the game. I was like, I like the transition threes, but we're getting to the point where they're just, none of them are ever falling. But the threat of them does help. CJ just being out, like the threat of CJ Frederick taking a three, even though he's, he went 3 for 9 from 3 in that game. That's like 33%, but they're still going to guard him out there like he's a 47% shooter, like you're saying. So if those transition threes really start to fall, I think that's when you're going to start seeing the offense kick in, because they shoot probably 3 or 4 of those a game, and they maybe make 1. So you start having those go in, and things are going to look a lot better.
A guy that really impressed me, Adu Thiero. He comes in. Cal has to get a little wonky with his lineups with Kaysen's injury, with the back spasms, and Xavier being out completely. Very limited with ball handlers, and you kind of had to have Adu Thiero step up. And goodness gracious, I love what he brought to the table. Didn't score a bucket, but 4 points, 4 of 4 from the free throw line, a couple fouls, and 2 turnovers, but he had 2 steals, and he was fighting like hell on defense. And that's exactly what he was supposed to do when he got in here. That's kind of the impact that he was making in the Bahamas earlier on. And it really just brought up the question of why in the world did we not see him against South Carolina when that team, and just what we saw out on the floor, they weren't fighting. They weren't, diving for loose balls. They weren't, taking gambles in the passing lanes to get steals in hopes of, getting transition opportunities the other direction. It just didn't feel like that heart was out there. And every time we've ever seen Adu Thiero on the floor, Zach, he has shown heart. He's going to make mistakes, but he's going to do it at 110 miles an hour. And that's kind of like that, kind of the basketball shtick, and kind of the cliche that if you're going to make mistakes, do it at 110 10 miles an hour. Like that.
He did a couple times.
Yeah, but you want to see that, because that energy and that effort is what sparks other stuff and the confidence with other guys that, okay, well, if Adu is out here making that play, if he's diving for that loose ball or jumping the passing lane to, create just havoc somewhere on the floor, it makes other guys go, okay, well, he's looking good on film right now. He's looking the part of somebody that wants to be out here and fight. Am I living up to that as well? Am I being that guy as well? And I thought that, it's kind of a contagious thing. I think that's exactly what he brought to the table yesterday. It wasn't, overly pretty in any regard, but I love the way he attacked. I love the way he drove and finished at the rim. He got called for a couple fouls and a charge here and there. Like it wasn't a perfect performance, but that's exactly what this team needed at this specific time of the year. And I'm all for more minutes for Adu Thera moving forward.
Yeah, he's not a guy that's going to win you a game right now, but he's definitely not going to lose you a game. He's probably not, I wouldn't say he's good at anything, but he's probably average at everything. So that, when you can do everything at a decent level, you're going to, help contribute more to a win than you would contribute to a loss. And I think that's what we saw from him yesterday. I think, what did he have? 13 minutes out there, but 0 for 3, but he hit 4 free throws, getting to the line, being aggressive. He's not exactly a floor spacer, but he's fast and quick enough that he can get around his guys. And it kind of goes back to what I've been harping on, that I just don't think Tennessee they just didn't have the guys to keep up with some of UK's athletes. And when you've got a guy like Adu out there who's like, his sole goal is to just out hustle everybody, it's going to breed success for him. And let's see, Adu was -1 in his 13 minutes as well. So if you can get that out of a freshman who's not shooting, not really being a factor on offense, that's a good start, I think.
Yeah. I thought Lance Ware gave some hard minutes as well.
Getting in the face of what's his name?
Euros. I appreciated the effort. I really, when you need an enforcer, when it's the physicality, that's something Bruiser Flint said in the game. He said, look, they have 2 dudes down low that are as physical and tough, and they're going to, try to beat you up.
They're going to pull Oscar down by his jersey, which they did.
They're going to throw elbows. They're going to push you to the ground. They're going to, yank and pull and tug. And I mean, that's who they are. And, whether you consider that dirty, whether however you want to describe it, I thought it was a lot of dirty play. But you have to be able to battle against that. And Lance Ware is the guy to battle against stuff like that. So I thought Lance, 2 points, 1 for 1 shooting, 3 rebounds, didn't do a whole lot.
Led the team in high fives.
And that's kind of half of it.
And it's not even a joke. Like, especially if you saw the video that Steven posted the other day, or I guess it was last night he posted, it was Lance Ware leading the charge on the bench, like rah-rahing the guys. He was like sitting there not watching the shots or the free throws kind of at the end there. Like, he's a guy. Here's a guy. Lance Ware is a guy. Like, Lance Ware is 7 minutes is all you need from him, because in those 7 minutes he's going to go out there and he's going to push around their biggest guy out there. And that's exactly what he did, because like you said, those 2 dudes for Tennessee, especially the Euros guy, there was some, I haven't went back and watched the game, but I would imagine there's going to be a bunch of calls where I'm like, that seems a little ridiculous that it either did get called or didn't get called. Part of that, well, never mind. You go ahead.
Zach Norton asks, Lance versus Plastic, who you got in a bar fight?
Lance, I think so. It's kind of funny when, we're at Hoop Hall right now, so I guess we'll probably talk about that shortly. But you see, when you watch DJ Wagner out there, who's another Camden boy just like Lance, DJ does the exact same stuff that Lance does in terms of they're always chirping a little bit. If an opposing player has the ball in his hand, he's going to poke it out. Just stuff like that. Like, I don't know if that's just what they get taught up there at Camden, but that mentality that they have, like that not back down mentality. I think my favorite part was when the Euros was trying to get in Lance's face a little bit there in the paint. And I believe Lance was saying, what are you going to do? Like, just looked at him a couple times, said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And the other guy didn't do anything, because what are you going to do?
I like Lance.
You're not going to fight Lance Ware.
I like Lance's like kind of psycho stare where he kind of like eyes you down and like claps in your face. Like
he knows what he's doing.
I think that there's like almost like on the fringe of like that psycho killer kind of mentality.
It's
like
that Kevin Garnett mentality.
Yeah, that kind of like
where you're like, that guy is legitimately crazy.
And he's going to kick and he's probably going to kick my butt. Like, I think that's going to happen. So yeah, I appreciate.
We love Lance.
Yeah. How about Lance?
How about Lance? Lance, honestly, he's probably the most genuinely nice guy on the team. If we're being honest, just everyone I think on the team is a nice guy, but when you talk to Lance in post-game press conferences and stuff, like that guy's just super down to earth. So it's kind of funny to see he pretty much has an alter ego when he's out there, and he knows how to use it, and he does it on purpose. Like that is not a bit. Like it's not a bit. He's doing that because he knows that that's how he can help his team. Because obviously he's not the most talented offensive player right now.
Mm-hmm. Another player that turned heads, Chris Livingston. Finally got to see him play that kind of fourth guard position. I know there's been all the talk about, is he a small ball 4? Is he a 3? Do we need to have him coming off screens and watching film of Devin Booker like Cal told him to do coming out of high school, which I thought was a huge mistake. We finally got to see him in that role that I think maximizes his ability and maximizes his production. He finishes with 6 points, 2 for 5 shooting, 2 for 2 from the line, 2 clutch free throws at that time, 4 rebounds, 1 turnover, 1 block, 1 steal in 18 minutes. So did a little bit of everything, but I thought they used him a little bit better. I think that he was put in better spots and in better positions to succeed, and I think that's what we need more out of. I thought Jacob Toppin played an okay game, especially things outside of scoring. 1 for 5 for 5 points. Wasn't super productive in that regard, but still had 8 rebounds, 5 assists.
5 assists.
Yeah. So
for Jacob Toppin has to be a career high.
Yeah, he was. He played pretty well outside of that. But Chris Livingston, I still think is making a very strong statement about his play and kind of the impact that he should be making when he's out on the floor. I think that there's a spot for him in this rotation, and I think he deserves the minutes. And it's just about figuring out how he's going to be used and what positions he's going to be most successful at. And I thought we saw a lot of that where he's he catches the ball on the perimeter and only 2 dribbles to the rim, finish through contact. Like that's when he's at his best, not when he has to initiate for himself or, when he can get downhill with just a couple dribbles and score, at the rim with a full head of steam. Like that's when he's at his best. And I think we got to see quite a bit of that yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really have anything else to add to that. Honestly, I think you covered it perfectly there.
Going through some of these questions, John P. Ryan, is it still too early for a player leaving / staying predictions? Reeves, Frederick, Collins, Livingston. Yeah, I think it is too early. I know going into the year, it's kind of adjusted a little bit with Antonio Reeves. And I was just talking to, a national guy yesterday about this, just kind of what the plan is moving forward, because there's still some talk that Kentucky could add, even more pieces through the transfer portal, or, that it's not just going to be this 5-man freshman class for this next season, that they could, kind of loosely planning on adding 7 scholarship players. Ooh, that also means that you have to have some pretty significant turnover. So what does that mean? What does that entail? Antonio Reeves, I think, came in initially with a 2-year plan. I think he thought he was a little bit ahead of schedule once he went through preseason, camp and all that stuff. So I think he kind of thought maybe he could be a one and done by the end of camp. The season has not gone the way I think everybody was expecting. So maybe that has kind of shifted his opinion back to the 2-year plan. I don't know. He does have 1 more year of eligibility, and he is one to keep a very close eye on. I'd love to see him have 2 years of stable play, kind of that adjustment of getting to Lexington and playing in the SEC and things like that. Kind of use this year as his kind of placeholder year and throw him in with the other freshmen that Kentucky's bringing in. I think that'd be huge. I do think CJ Frederick will be back. Chris Livingston, I think it's a big question. I'm still not 100% what the plan is for him. How he's going to be used to close out the season, what the minutes are going to look like. So I think he's a big question mark. And Damian Collins,
it's impossible to call that situation.
That could go so many different ways. If you just had to think on it and just guess, I'd say that he probably wouldn't be back. Just because of his circumstances are so different. Would it shock me for him to go home and play for a Baylor or a Texas Tech or something like that, where he can be by his mom, by his little sisters, and that sort of thing. That wouldn't shock me in the slightest. But
I don't think many people would blame him either if that were the situation. I think we'd all love to see Damian come back because he still has all those intangibles, but his situation is definitely different than most.
Yeah, so I that's definitely wait and see mode. Let's go through. Are there any other? I guess before we move on to the recruiting stuff and why we're here and all those things, how do you feel about just the trajectory of this team right now? Do you feel like this was a real step in the right direction, and that we could build on this and kind of stop taking steps back after having steps forward like we had against this, or are you still in wait and see mode?
My whole thing coming into this game, and I talked about it on some other platforms and stuff, was I just wanted to see something different. I didn't want to see the same game plan roll out there that obviously just hadn't been working against good teams. And, they were forced into making changes because of what happened with Xavier. But because of that, we saw the changes made. So how they incorporate Xavier, I think, will be important, or reincorporate again him will be very important to how, whether or not Cal decides to continue running with guys like Kate or CJ and Antonio at the same time with Kaysen, because clearly that is a lineup that just works. It's more modernized. Like you're going to have 3 shooters. It doesn't matter who you have at the 4 or 5, because you're going to have those 3 guys who can make shots. So if things continue to trend in that direction, I certainly think that this can be, the turning point, if you will, of this season. But I think if we see things kind of revert back to, the stall ball with Xavier Wheeler in the final 10 minutes of games, Kentucky didn't really do a lot of, the deliberate half court, whatever it was, run the clock down. They kind of did, but it was like very, very late in that game.
Yeah.
You want Kentucky to do that, like they were up 7 with maybe like 3 minutes left, and that's when
when you grind it out.
That's when you grind out a game, not when I've said it multiple times, not when you're down 7 against South Carolina at home with 10 minutes left. You don't try and grind out a game then. So yeah, and like Michael Brady said here, Wheeler cannot play 30 minutes a game. I think, or 35. I think that should just be a fact right now. Like Wheeler cannot, he needs to play closer to 20, 25 minutes, I think is probably a sweet spot for him. Use more CJ, more Antonio, Adu in spaces as well. So I'm not entirely ready to say that this, the Kentucky's back, but I certainly think that there was a lot of different things that they did, like just small little changes to the offense, not necessarily the defense, because I think the defense was, I think they were just more locked in. I think that was kind of what it came down to on that end. It wasn't any structural changes. They still put Oscar in pick and rolls, but it's a lot easier to defend the pick and roll for Oscar when the guy that he's defending is slower than he is. And I think that's a big part of, how he was able to not necessarily get played off the floor like he had been in some of the other games.
And I think just in terms of team morale, because that was such a topic of conversation this week, I did want to address that. Just what this team is like. Do they like each other? Do they hate each other? Are there two guys on the floor or 2 guys on the team that are beefing right now, as some of the Twitter people were talking about and all that, and trying to explain this in the way that needs to be put out on this platform. I don't think anybody on the team hates each other. I don't think that there's this just built up animosity toward one another where they, just hate each other. But it's different when, it's okay to say that personalities maybe aren't, Oscar preaching on a Sunday morning and Kaysen Wallace, just kind of being his own guy and in his own world. Like he's a different kind of kid. And, Xavier Wheeler's a little bit different. Like these are just a lot of different personalities that doesn't always,
even Jacob's the same,
Yeah, it just doesn't mean that they all like to go on, 13 people team dinners and go to the movies together and go bowling. Sometimes they do that and they are friendly, but that's where a lot of the kind of disconnect came from, where it's like, okay, it just, the heart and those sorts of things. I think that's where some of those questions came from, because it just didn't look like they were very cohesive. I also think that, when Cal keeps talking about mental toughness and the mental health of this team and how that is all going, I do think that that's also been a very, significant part of this, that this is a very different team in that regard. And there is some, mental health stuff going on with this team. And I think that's a very important thing to keep a close eye on when, you say a Kaysen Wallace is a quitter because he left the bench with 8 minutes left in the first quarter after 8 minutes playing, against South Carolina, and you're quick to say, whoever go and personally attack a kid's character and things like that. I just don't think that's fair in the slightest, because these kids are going through some stuff, and it has been a really, really trying year in that locker room for a long list of different reasons. And I think that's something that we kind of all need to take a step back and realize and say, okay, something's not right, clearly, as you can tell that when the body language is what it is, maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe we should be, thinking that side of things. And I think some stuff has come to light that has explained a lot of that a lot better. And for them to have this moment, a 63-56 win in Knoxville, an upset rivalry win when they have gone through what they have this year, and it has been as disappointing and frustrating as it has been. I think it's huge. I think this was a huge, huge, huge win that they had to have. I mean, they had to start taking steps in the right direction just for team morale and mental health, and getting these guys back in the positive mentality that yeah, we can be this. Like, we can still be this team, build that confidence back up. Like, it's a huge, huge thing for them to win in the manner that they did. The grit and grind, tough physical battle. Like, this wasn't just a hot shooting night where you kind of felt a little fluky, like it wasn't anything like that. You just won a hard fought win in Knoxville against the top 5 team in the country with the number 1 defense in America. Like, that's a huge win. They needed this team. No matter how the things look, you're playing Georgia on Tuesday. I don't know how much you're going to learn from that one, but I do think that there's a lot of stuff to hang on to and hold on to and be excited about moving forward. And I think that's the biggest part of all of this. They needed this win for a lot deeper reasons than just basketball. So I am very, very happy for them and proud of them for fighting. When you look at that video of Chin Coleman crying on the bench, think why. Think why would there be that level of emotion? Not because the team has been struggling and they just needed a win. Like, there's stuff to that. There's a reason for that, and it's really cool that they were able to do that and have that moment. So
when people have been mentioned here in the comments talking about the locker room celebration, it was like the 30-second video. I saw it, I think, like the actual behind the scenes video. I saw it for the first time maybe a few hours ago. Where all the guys are there, like cheering on Cal, hugging him, loving him, like. All the guys in there, they clearly care, and like they all cared together. They all, they knew how badly they needed that win. Like you said, it obviously helps with the resume, but they really just needed that win because the trending in the wrong direction is obviously just not going to help things. So winning cures all, as we know the saying. So
yep,
just got to keep it rolling.
Well, now for the reason why we are here up in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's been a hell of an event, Zach. I love this event. It's one of my favorite every year. 4 of the 5 Kentucky signees for the 2023 class are up here. DJ Wagner, Aaron Bradshaw, the 2 headliners. Justin Edwards is playing tonight, actually.
On ESPN?
On ESPN. Make sure that you're watching.
Against Ian Jackson.
And against that one. We'll definitely talk about Ian Jackson as well. Reed Shepherd played earlier this morning. Zach, what are some of your takeaways from what you've seen up here at Hoop Hall?
Yeah, so we'll just start with the game last night. We saw a really good matchup between Camden and Centennial. Centennial's from California. Jared McCain is their headliner. He's the 5-star committed to Duke. I think he's the TikTok guy, right? He's got like a million
TikTok
Instagram guys. Yeah, 1 million followers on Instagram or something like that. But he's incredibly good. I think he had 27 points. Him and DJ were kind of going at it, a little chirping, as I was talking about earlier. DJ loves to talk. And I love to watch DJ talk because he's one of those few guys that can really back it up. I believe DJ had 27 points, was efficient from the field. I think he was like maybe 1 for 5 from 3. But the kid just finishes at the rim better than, like I was telling Jack yesterday, he's going to be the best finisher at UK since Isaiah Briscoe. Like, this kid,
I agree.
He just doesn't miss layups. It's incredible. He's not even that big and strong. Like, one of my concerns was maybe he needs to toughen up a bit to maybe power through these guys when he gets to the college level. I'm not even sure he needs that because he's not even like getting contact. He's just shifting around these guys and snaking or slithering, whatever, weird adjective you want to use. He just finds ways to get himself in a position. And sometimes he's out of position when he's shooting the ball, and he'll just flick it up there or, roll it off the side of the rim or the side of the backboard, and it'll just find its way in. So he was really impressive. DJ is what he is. We've seen him so many times. He's an incredible scorer. Like, he's just a really good shot maker. He's got a great mid-range game. He's going to have to improve that 3-point shot a little bit, maybe show a little bit more effort on defense, or consistent effort on defense, I should say. And then Aaron Bradshaw had a solid game. He was 15 points, 8 rebounds, had a really big power putback dunk that Jack talked about on Twitter, where Cal was trying to coach, but not really, because you had Cal, Antigua, Chin Coleman, and Worldwide West were all there to watch that game.
Family ties.
Must have been like a 3-hour, 4-hour turnaround from Knoxville to Springfield. So I'm sure that was a very quick flight that they were trying to get there. But I believe that Camden ended up losing that game by 4. Centennial just had more players, just more talent overall is kind of what it came down to. Camden really just kind of has DJ and Aaron, and as good as those guys are, you still need a little bit more. That was also our first look at Billy Richmond III, who's the new guy that just got an offer from Kentucky. He's a 2024 kid. He was impressed me with just how big he was. His stats weren't that great. I think he had 2 points, 3 boards, kind of did just things all over the floor. Didn't really, make a huge impact in one general area, but he's definitely a nice prospect. Like I said, 6'6", he's built already. Really, really big kid. His dad played for Cal at Memphis, so there's connections there. That's the reason he got the offer. I think Cal probably sees some sort of Adu Thiero type path with him. But DJ and Aaron impressed me as they kind of always do. And then this morning we got to see Reed play. North Laurel had their first game with a fully healthy roster since I talked with Reed's mom after. She said it was the first healthy game with every player since December 8th, wow, which is over a month ago. So if you look at some of North Laurel stats and notice how they're 9-8 on the year, that would be why. They've also played 6 out-of-state games, mostly against nationally ranked competition. They played Mount St. Joseph's today, which was led by Illinois commit. He's a 4-star Amani Hansberry, and their team overall just had more guys than North Laurel. But Reed struggled, admittedly, to shoot the ball. I think he ended up 5 for 21, 3 for 14 from 3, but he still damn near had a triple-double. He had 13 rebounds, 9 assists. He had a couple of really timely clutch threes that kept his team from, getting blown out. And that's something you notice with North Laurel is Reed finds ways for them to not get blown out, even when it looks like they might. Like they were down, pretty much 10 the whole game until kind of the very end when Reed just kind of, slowly but surely chips away. But then you've got guys like Ryan Davison and Gavin Chadwell. We're really going deep into the Kentucky talk here, or Bluegrass State talk if you want. But those two guys, having them back was huge. So that team will ultimately be fine as they get their chemistry back. They have no more out-of-state games. So it's just all straight, a lot of South Laurel games, stuff like that, where they're going to get back on track. And that'll be a team that's going to contend for a title. But Reed played in front of Cal, Antigua, and Chin again. He was talking about how he loves those guys all coming out and to watching them. And with Jack, made sure to ask all those Reed, DJ, and Aaron kind of about their thoughts over the Tennessee win. Got some really great quotes from them. So far, so good. I like you said, this is one of my favorite events too. It's just really well run, very well organized. And we get to see Justin Edwards tonight. He plays Ian Jackson, so that'll be a massive matchup. That's a 9:00 start. I wouldn't be shocked if it goes a little bit later, maybe around 9:30, just with how many games they have throughout the day. But on ESPN, so far,
I think it's on ESPN 2.
It's on ESPN, I think.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, it just said ESPN on the thing, so it could be ESPN 2. I'm not sure, but it's on.
Check your channel guide. Just
one of the family of networks from the worldwide leader. But the Kentucky commits, outside of Reed shooting 5 for 21, even
he did tweak his ankle at the end of the first half. By the way, his
scoop.
Well, yeah, his parents said, and UK also said that as well. So they keep that in mind.
But even still, even when he shot 5 for 21, North Laurel was better than that team. And it kind of, I said earlier that Mount St. Joseph had more talent. They did. North Laurel still outplayed them. They just shot 6 for 26 from 3. And that's a team that typically shoots, about 40% from 3. So they make
unbelievable volume.
Coach Nate Valentine there, he loves to get up shots. You shoot a lot of threes with that team, and they've got a lot of really good shooters. So that's part of the chemistry thing too. That team will ultimately be fine, like I said. But even in a 5 for 21 game, Reed still does things all over the floor. I believe he had 3 steals and 2 blocks as well. Hit some timely free throws. So it's just all over the court with him. And then, like I said, we got Justin Edwards tonight, so we're looking forward to that one.
Yep. ESPN 2, University 6 says they check the channel guide. So
at 9 p.m. Yeah,
9
supposed
p.m.
to be 9, but like I said, it'll be the 8th game of the day, and they've got them in an hour and a half increments. So if there's one overtime game, it's going to screw everything up.
Yeah. Well, I guess the news of the hour and why everybody came here and what all the focus is on is Ian Jackson and his commitment coming on Monday. We put out before this weekend even started that that was the plan. So originally he was planning on committing on January 31st. He decides to push it up. Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. He wanted to get this decision over with. He just took two official visits back-to-back to UNC and Arkansas, visited Kentucky for Big Blue Madness, but those are the three schools. He's also considering Oregon and LSU, but they're not threats. It's Arkansas, UNC, and Kentucky as the main finalists that he's considering. And it's a very, very interesting recruitment, I must say. This is one that he is very purposely keeping things close to vest. I have talked to people close to all three of the programs that think that they are in it and are very invested, and they're all saying different things, and it's very fascinating. Just kind of seeing from both sides of the aisle, talking to people kind of close to Ian and, that know his recruitment, but also talking to some of the coaches and that are familiar with it. And I don't think anybody knows. And I don't think that he's made a final decision. He commits at halftime at 3 p.m. The 3 p.m. game tomorrow on Monday. And I don't even still think he has finalized his plans. I know that he was planning on calling the staffs of who he was considering tonight. But leading up to the game, they were driving up. They left at noon from New York to get here in Springfield. So a long drive, Zach, to think about what you want. And I think that he kind of did that on purpose. I think as of right now, he's in the decision-making process. He plays at 9, and I think he is all in on this. And tonight afterward, I think late tonight is going to be when he sits down and goes, all right, I need to figure this out. Why this school? Why that school? Pros and cons. And I think that's when he's going to finalize something. So no, I don't think a final decision has been made. I will say there is a lot of positive talk about Kentucky. There's some reasons why I have been concerned about Arkansas. But I think some people have kind of jumped in and said that Arkansas isn't feeling confident in their chances. And that would be more so if he decides to open things up later down the road or whatever, that would be the time for Muss to jump back in and really kind of put forth the full court effort. I don't think they are going to be done recruiting him no matter what. But I do think that Kentucky's in a very good spot. And I would put probably in the chances of it right now, Kentucky at 1, UNC at 2, and Arkansas at 3.
If you're logging a pick in the on 3 RPM, what would you say, Jack?
I would say Kentucky 60%.
60% confidence.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do think that Kentucky is where he's always wanted to be his entire childhood. Kentucky was his dream school. They have done a really, really good job recruiting him, prioritizing him, making it very clear that he is their number one option in the class. I think Kentucky wants him committed sooner rather than later, I think, to make a statement.
We're back.
Why would they want to push a commitment for a 24 kid right around the time that all this buzz about Texas and Cal leaving and all this stuff? I don't think anything Cal does is a mistake. So I think that you should keep a very close eye on it. It's not done. I'm not saying that Kentucky is, Kentucky's not even overly confident about its chances. I think they're understanding that they have a fight and that they're still fighting up until the final buzzer. And these next 24 hours, it has been 24. We are in the midst of the 24 hours, but this next day leading up to the game, I think, leading up to the commitment, I think it's going to be all hell breaking loose and seeing each of these coaching staff's best shots. So it's going to be very interesting. I think tonight's going to be a big one. He plays against Justin Edwards. Coach Orlando Antigua will be here for Kentucky. Coach Cal and Chin had to fly back to Lexington to get back to practice with KT Turner. They're all back in Lexington now, but O is here and he is watching very closely, and we'll see. I think 9 o'clock is going to be a big game. I know Kentucky fans are very much excited for it. Zach, what do you like about Ian, and what would his commitment mean for this program?
Well, what it would mean is it's going to kick the ball rolling for that 24 class. And I'm sure there's probably other kids in the 24 class that are maybe waiting on a guy like Ian Jackson to make his call before they can, really figure out if they want to play with a guy like him or what have you. And it looks, someone I know tossed in here, the reclass buzz around him. I feel like that's still a no-go.
Yeah. I don't think he will. His grades are good, but I don't think he has the credits to reclassify at this stage, if that makes sense. So I do not think that he will reclass, and can if it's Kentucky, he certainly won't reclass because, unless something happens with Rob or, whatever, again, we've talked about that. It's a great insurance policy to have to, if you kind of get in a desperation situation and you need Ian to reclass and say, look, we need you here immediately, figure out the grades, take summer classes, winter classes, all that stuff. Maybe that would be the case, but as of right now, he is not moving forward academically as if he's reclassifying. And I think that's a very important side of things. So I didn't want to cut you off with that one. But
no, you're good. In terms of talent wise, I think if you want to kind of compare him to maybe a former Kentucky guy, you could look at maybe Shea, with just the height and the length playing as the guard position, really decisive movements, not necessarily the fastest guy out there, but going to find ways to beat you off the dribble regardless. He's just a very talented scorer from pretty much all areas of the floor. He's a game-changing type guy who can come out there and just drop 15, 20 points in a college game whenever he wants. He's built right now to play in college. That's why the reclass talk is so big, because he's one of the few guys in that class that you could throw into the 23 group and he'd still, find his way to, battle against all those college kids and whatnot. So I'm a big fan of Ian Jackson. I think we all are. I would probably still have him above Trey Johnson if we're, picking between those two. Flory would be number one in Zach's opinion, but Ian Jackson is definitely a stud. And if they can get him, like you said, some of these things, they're not just by accident, with all the Texas buzz with Cal and then picking up this massive win. Something to put the cherry on top for this whole week would be to get the best player in the 24 class and start building it from there. So it would definitely be it would just continue this momentum for Kentucky, which they surely need right now. So if that's the choice, I think everyone's going to be a winner in that group.
And it's just a really important decision because the 24 class is so bad. As Darrell Williams says, 24 class isn't that good, respectfully. It's not. It's terrible. It's the worst class that I've seen in the last decade. I am not high on the 23 class overall. I think everybody, if you take the 23 class and put it any other year, I think you start at 10 and go down. I think, even DJ would be number 10 or number 9 or number 8 or something, in that kind of range in 18 or 19 or what, some of the very good classes in recent memory. I think he is, I think, Aaron Bradshaw, I think Dillingham, I think those are all in this kind of the same mold where they're very good players. And any other year you'd be like, oh, that's a really solid addition to add. I think DJ, in my opinion, is the best of the bunch. And I think he's going to be he has a very high floor, but definitely not like this John Wall pro ceiling where he's going to be the number one pick. And there's not a John Wall or Anthony Davis or Zion Williamson or anything like that in this class. And I think there's no generational talent, all just very good players with solid floors and,
like
medium ceilings, maybe. I don't even think there's a guy out there that has this, otherworldly ceiling either. So I think that class is what it is, and 24 is even worse. So
25 is good, though. We got to watch Cooper Flagg and Cameron Boozer yesterday. Those kids would be the best. They're the two best high school players in the country. They have to be.
For my money, I think Cooper Flagg is the best player in the world right now. Not named Victor Wembanyama.
Better than LeBron, better than Luka. You heard it here first from Jack Pilgrim.
At the high school level, Cooper 100%. He's good.
Yeah, he's very good.
He's very good. But so I mean that to say, Ian is such a crucial get for 24 because every other player in the class, it's just such a significant drop off after, the core group up top. Kentucky's very, very high on Boogie Flan. He didn't have a great game today. His team lost, but they're very high on him. Love what he brings to the table. He compares his game to John Morant. And it's the who he wants to be.
Can he dunk from back here? That's all I want to know.
No, he cannot.
We did get some Tahad Pettiford scoop.
And that's another tough one because I think Tahad is also very solid, and I think that he would fit in very well. He's a 6 foot De'Aaron Fox.
Six flat.
De'Aaron Fox is 6'5" and had the length and all that stuff. He's a 6 foot De'Aaron Fox, which De'Aaron already couldn't shoot and, has those flaws, and it definitely doesn't, help if you're 5 inches shorter that, don't have the length and, that sort of thing for him. So you can't strike out with guys like Ian Jackson with the rest of the class is as bad as it is. So it's a very crucial get in that regard. I think if you can lock him up, I think the next step is figuring out, is it either Trey Johnson or I think Boogie Flant, I think it's going to be one of those two guys. And if I think they strike out, if they somehow miss on Ian tomorrow, I think that, I think that's when Tahad Pettiford would step in as one of their top options. And I think there's a lot of moving pieces that if kind of domino effect, if whatever happens with Ian will change what they do elsewhere. Trey Johnson is considering the pro route. He was considering Texas, and that ain't happening anymore. So it depends on what happens with him. If he decides to go pro, then Kentucky needs to move to its next option, which would be Boogie Fland and, Tahad Pettiford and, maybe like
not Ace Bailey.
Yeah, Ace Bailey randomly commits to Rutgers, and
good luck, buddy. Enjoy the NIL money, I guess.
Don't know about that one. Let's go through some of these questions. What's going on with Trey Johnson? Yeah, I talked about that. I think pro is probably the favorite for him right now, but I think Kentucky's in a good spot, honestly. I think that they are
Texas ties.
I think that they got a little uncomfortable, admittedly, with Kentucky kind of pushing for a commitment with him. I think I've heard that recently, that they were really wanting, kind of with the Ian Jackson thing that we're having right now. I think that they were really pushing for a commitment, wanting to kind of get this 24 class rolling with a big major thing. I don't think Trey Johnson is ready to commit yet. I think it is just very early with him. And, it's not like it's, hurt feelings one way or the other. It's just one of those like, hey, I know you guys are wanting him to commit right now. We're not ready for that. Let's just kind of take a step back. And, so I think that's definitely something that's going on right now. And I think Kentucky's still in a very solid spot. If among colleges, I think Texas was the leader. I definitely think that has changed. Baylor's still in the mix, and he would like to stay home. But there are a lot of deep ties with Kentucky. He's very close with Tyrese Maxey, and is from the Garland area down there. So definitely another guy to keep a close eye on. But watch out for the pros with him as well. Somebody else, Ethan G, asked about what about someone like Dink Pate. I don't see that happening. I don't think there's
not good enough now.
I don't think there's going to be a need for him. I just think that they're going to hit on their top targets, and I think they're in a solid spot with Boogie Fland. I think there's still a lot of work to do to land him, but I do think that he likes Kentucky quite a bit. I think they're just kind of go. It's tiered right now. They know who their top options are. They want Ian Jackson, Trey Johnson, Flory Badunga, and Boogie Fland is kind of that right in that tier, probably the top tier for them, and the next tier would be guys like Dink, guys like
Billy Richmond.
Billy Richmond. Oh, he's a cat. He's definitely like that's going to happen.
He's a do.
Just in terms of
doing the same thing.
Just the connection.
They love the Camden pipeline.
He is going to end up at Kentucky, but for sure. In terms of talent, it's definitely in the tier below, but he will absolutely be making that happen. Adam Hicks, does UK add a power forward from the portal in 23? I do. I mean,
depends.
I think by numbers, I think that they were loosely expecting more departures. Jacob Toppin, they were expecting to leave and guys like that, but it just depends on how things unfold to close out the year. But I would not be shocked if they did. I think they're going to be interested to see what they do with Aaron Bradshaw. I think there's some talk that they want to maybe utilize him at the 4 and kind of have a face-up game. I don't know if it's the smartest decision, but when you have a guy like Ugo coming back, very likely, you got to figure out ways to put him on the floor together, and at least he has the face-up game for that. John Piron, what is going on with Flory? Flory has the most he has the most complicated recruitment in basketball. Kentucky thinks it still has a shot, a pretty solid shot actually. Indiana's kind of right in there. It's a very deep situation. I don't think it's going to take a lot. There's going to be 5 or 6 more twists and turns in that recruitment before he makes a commitment. And I do think one of those turns will end up having Kentucky as a contender. It's definitely not a 0% chance. I think they're still very, very much in the thick of things. So yeah, I would keep an eye on him, but a distant eye, I think, is probably a good place to put it. BBN recruits only. Carter Knox, and then University 6 says, what about Carter Knox as well? I think he's in the next tier down as well with, I think he's above Dink Pate, but kind of in that Tahad Pettiford,
Isaiah Elohim.
Yeah, Isaiah Elohim mold where I think they like him, don't love him, want to see where things go. It's just they want to get their main guys and kind of go from there. So I wouldn't bet on him, but it's definitely one that they're still monitoring. Ben from Kentucky, good question. Would Oscar come back? UK isn't like ruling that out, but I don't think it's a good thing. I think like it's tough because Oscar is who he is, and he is a larger than life figure, and he has helped this program in so many different ways. But I also think, in a way, his playing style has in a way hurt Kentucky, and how they've had to
caps their ceiling.
They've had to play through him because he did decide to come back. So I think when you don't have to play through him and you kind of play a bit more free brand of basketball, Aaron Bradshaw will be used completely different than how Oscar is being used. And even Ugo, I think, is going to be used completely different. So I just don't see him coming back. I definitely don't. University says
Connor Riggs says he wouldn't fit well with the incoming class. And I think that's a big part of it is, first of all, 5 freshmen will be tough for a guy like Oscar, I think, just to deal with and handle. And especially because all those guys have really different personalities. So you want to talk about, locker room stuff. I think that's just something right there that, and then even skill or fit wise, all those guys that UK is bringing in, Rob and DJ, they want to run and gun. They want to get into the paint. They want to get up shots as quick as they can. And that's going to be really tough with a guy like Oscar in there who's, you have to kind of work your offense around him a little bit because he's so good when he gets his hands on the ball, 5 feet away. Well, UK actually went like 7 for 21 on layups or whatever it was against Tennessee. But, you get the gist of what I'm saying.
University 6, Nas Cunningham is a pro route guy, right? Yeah, definitely not going to be Kentucky. I think
he's kind of sunk ever since he was number 1.
They closely monitor him for a while, but I think that's one that's just definitely not going to happen. I don't see that unfolding at all. Another name to keep an eye on for 24 is Darren Peterson, for a reclass guy for 25. He has the New Jersey connection with the scholars and
the loan offer of 25 currently.
Because it's 25. He's going to end up in 24. And I do think that Kentucky will have a very, very realistic shot. And I think that they're probably the favorite right now. And I know Kentucky will take him if he wants to play now, they would take him because they are in love with his game. He's one of the best players in all of high school basketball right now. 25 is a very, very good class. 23 is meh. 24 is bad, and 25 is elite. So having guys like Darren Peterson reclass up to 24 will beef up that class quite a bit, but definitely keep an eye on him in 24 and what Kentucky's chances. And just kind of when you're thinking big picture about the 24 class, make sure that you kind of loosely in the back of your mind remember that Darren Peterson will be reclassing and joining that one. And I do think Kentucky has a very solid shot with that one. So keep an eye on that.
Connor was asking here about COVID years. COVID years, the only people that don't have the extra COVID year right now are true freshmen and true sophomores. Those are the only people that don't have the extra year right now.
So I think
Damian Collins, Kaysen, and Chris and Adu would be the only 4, I believe, unless I'm forgetting a sophomore, would be the only 4. And Ugana. None of those guys have the extra year. But, in case of a few of those guys, it doesn't really matter. Adu it could. So he's only got 4 years. But everyone else, like Jacob, CJ, Case, or, Oscar, all those guys can all have another year, even if they are, 5th and 6th year guys.
Ben from Kentucky, do you think Dillingham can fill it up at UK like Monk or Murray?
He'll certainly try.
He will try. He will most certainly try. I think he's going to be really fascinating.
That's the best way to put it.
It could go really well. It could also go very poorly. And I would not be shocked at either of those scenarios unfolding. He is who he is. His game is what it is. And we'll see how that unfolds. I think he's developing very well at overtime, and I do think UK is happy with how his development is going, and that's a good thing. He needs to, add on some weight and figure out who he is as a basketball player. Will Cal allow him to dance and do kind of the highlight reel level things that has made him so
Jordan
popular?
Clarkson, Jordan Poole type.
Don't know.
Dancing around.
He has never really done that. Malik Monk was kind of the last guy to have a green light where you could kind of just live with some of those decisions that he made. And
like I said, there will be a night where Rob Dillingham drops 30 and just can't miss. And, no one should be shocked when he follows it up the next game with a 2 for 12 type performance. Like, that's just kind of what he is. He's a shooter. Like, he loves to get up shots, and he's going to take tough shots like Jamal Murray did. But Murray was a special shot maker, and Dillingham's probably not at that caliber level right now, at least. You know, he can obviously still improve. So, the Dillingham experiment will definitely be an experiment.
OTW Music says Peterson and Jackson won't be in the same class at Kentucky. I fully expect Jackson to reclassify. I mean, he's not if he's going to Kentucky. So, barring a roster shakeup that would need him to reclass, I don't think that's how it's going to unfold.
I think that's a good question there from Cody
Hall. Who's point guard next year, Dillingham or Wagner?
Xavier also has an extra year if we want to talk about that. But see, Xavier's not going to play with those two. Like you can kind of
Xavier
count that
will not be back.
I'm not sure. I would say DJ does.
I think it's going to be Rob.
Ooh, a battle.
I think Rob will be Kentucky's
battle.
Because
neither of them are great passers.
DJ is better off ball, and it's so interesting. I mean, it just depends. It just depends on how they're being used. But Rob almost has to be on ball to be successful. That's just kind of who he is. That's his identity as a basketball player. And I think they're going to share those duties, but I definitely lean point guard for Rob to initiate and let, DJ kind of be the off-ball creator, catch and shoot, but also kind of take you off the dribble type. I think they're going to, again, I do think that they're going to share a lot of on-ball duty. So I don't think it's kind of a moot point. It really doesn't make a difference versus touches, but I think it's closer than you think. I don't think it's just a lock that DJ is going to be the main primary ball handler and everybody else watch out. But I do think that Dillingham might be that. And it's interesting dynamic to say Rob Dillingham, the most erratic, entertaining player in high school basketball, is going to be PG1 for Kentucky. Zach.
Yeah, and I'll be in a believe it when I see it type thing, just because of, I think Dillingham's probably a better passer than DJ. He's also a more dangerous passer, risky passer, likes to go for the big play, highlight type play passes, which can get him in trouble a lot. DJ, DJ is just going to take it to the rim instead of making the pass. So like you said, it'll probably be a game by game thing. What's just going to work better for Kentucky. If Rob Dillingham is having an off night and he's making Cal want to pull his hair out, you're going to see DJ playing the one, I think, and that's there will be a lot of times where it's just you won't even know who's the point guard. Just both of those guys are just going to share the duties so split. It'll be kind of like a Tyrese Maxey, Emmanuel Quickly type deal where. Quickly was more of the two, if you want to kind of, and Ashton Hagens as well, where those three guys all really split the one. Even if you had Quickly kind of being the third guy, he still did a lot of point guard duty. So I think you'll just see a lot of stuff like that.
John P. Ryan, Ulyss will be huge for Wagner and Dilly. I completely agree. I think if there's somebody to reel in Dillingham and say, look, I know what it takes to be an elite point guard under John Calipari. Don't do what you are doing and the mindset that you bring. Like there's a lot of value to have a dude that like has the biggest green light you could imagine in his own head, like where he's like, I don't take bad shots. Like everything I take is that Antoine Walker mindset. Well, why do you take so many threes? Because there ain't no fours. Like that's the mindset that Rob Dillingham has. And there's a lot of value in that, but there, it also comes with at a cost at a time. And so if there's ever been a guy that could potentially reel him in and, kind of maybe maximize his potential, I do think it might be a guy like Tyler Ulyss. So great comment there from John P. Ryan. We're going to start wrapping this thing up. Connor Riggs said Dilly, CJ, DJ, Edwards, Bradshaw is his starting five. Obviously flip DJ and CJ. I think CJ would be the three in that regard. But I really do like the idea of Justin Edwards being a small ball four here at Kentucky. I think he really is polished, working out of that high post, kind of the stuff that we want Jacob Toppin to be right now. I definitely think that's something that he thrives in quite a bit. So keep that in mind. Ben from Kentucky, I could see Dillingham score 40 in one game, and the next he goes 2 for 20. Yeah,
that will happen.
University 6, Ulyss sitting on the bench while Kaysen Wallace was out bleeding on the court. That brought back a memory. Sure did. I love just that connection right there. John Braxton Jr., what about Reed? Yeah, I don't think he's starting next year for Kentucky, but I think he's going to play. I do think he's going to play. And I've said this before. I just think the style of the brand of basketball that he plays is just very safe and very team first. And I think that's been frustrating for me seeing him on the 3SSB circuit and some of these all-star events and things like that. You want to see more out of him. You want him to be the MFer that he is and kind of the dog that he does have in him.
We saw it today.
And you
even
did
when
see
he got,
him.
when he went 5 for 21.
He went 5 for 21 and 3 for 14 from three. That boy was getting his shots up, and he was taking runners with one,
he
off
shot
one
on
foot from three. He takes some shots. I just want him. I want him to kind of have that dog with him. He fits into systems really well, but at the same time, I want him to be his own system. I want people to work around him as well instead of him fitting to everybody else. So,
and Reed sorry to cut you off, but Reed doesn't have to have the ball as well. He's not like a DJ in God, what's his name? Rob, the other guy. He's not like them where you have to have, he has to be on the ball the whole time, because Reed's does a lot of the other things really, really well. He's a great team defender, pretty good on ball as well. He's not a guy that I honestly see coming in and playing a lot of minutes as a freshman, just because from watching him for over the last couple of years, his personality just he's more of I'm going to work my way or wait my way into until he finds a moment where he wants to strike type deal. So I think
he's a slow burner.
That's a good way to put it. He's going to be a little bit hesitant, and that's not going to be a lack of confidence. That's just kind of how he plays. He just likes to feel things out, and it'll probably take him a little bit longer than the other guys to just get his flow going. So I think that's why you might see a year two Reed is a lot better and maybe a lot more productive and gets more minutes. But I'm not expecting, honestly, too much from Reed in his first year, just because I don't think he's going to get comfortable in his role until the next season.
John P. Ryan, is AAU a better indicator for Reed playing with more talent there? It's not even about playing with more talent. It's just his mindset. It's his approach to these games where, I do think it's a better indicator of what he's going to be initially. I do think he's going to fit into the system really well. I think he's going to make the right reads, and he's going to pass, be a very pass first mindset style of play. That's who he's going to be for sure.
He's going to run off screens too. He can do that stuff.
He's going to be a catch and shoot guy, pass first, team first facilitator. He is not going to be a dog, go get my own shot and camp style of play mindset. That's not who he's not going to be this ISO guy, though he is in North Laurel quite a bit. So interested to see how it unfolds. But I do think that he will play very, very soon.
Reeds, I heard you say that too.
Yeah. Any Ben from Kentucky? I saw that Reed versus Travis Perry game, and it blew my mind how we have two dudes in the same state that can actually play. Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with Travis Perry. I don't see him ending up at Kentucky unless
unless he grows 5 inches.
Yeah, they offered and they do like him a lot, but I just think the fit is going to be better at a Purdue or, even the pace. I think he'd look really good at Ole Miss. I do think he'd fit in well with that pace. All right, let's wrap up with this one. Mark Carver, back to this team, Tuesday night, Georgia predictions. I love the way we end this one. It's going to be a late one, 9 p.m. It's our first 9 p.m. SEC game of the year, and I hate them. But yeah, Zach, interested to see your thoughts on that one. What do you think happens on Tuesday night?
Well, we know that Georgia isn't exactly, one of the upper echelon teams in the SEC this year. They stole Florida's coach, and they're still kind of figuring out their identity, it seems like, at this stage. This is going to be a big tell of if Kentucky is actually, figured things out or not. Yeah. Because coming off a win against Tennessee, Kentucky should absolutely beat the brakes off Georgia at home, even if it's a late game. With all how the momentum's going, they should win this game by 15 points. But we've been saying that about, they were supposed to beat South Carolina by 20 and ended up losing that game. So
should have been 30.
Yeah. So it's going to be more about Kentucky and less about Georgia. Does Kentucky come out and does Cal kind of run with the same stuff that he did before Xavier went out? Or, if Xavier does come back, how does he reincorporate him? And just kind of how do they that's a game that you could almost kind of toy with those things a little bit more, and maybe that might make the score a little bit closer than you think. But I would still predict. Normally, I'm not big on predicting Kentucky to win by 10 or more this season because I got burned on it after the fifth game. So I've kind of been predicting, if not a loss, most of the time, just closer games. But I would say Kentucky wins this game by 10, and if they don't, then that's probably the bigger story of this whole week than as opposed to beating Tennessee.
If they can win by 13, I think it would really be a kind of where you can start thinking, okay, maybe they have turned a corner. Maybe you can start thinking in that way, where it's not like, okay, was Tennessee just a one-off? Like this is a game like this is one that you're supposed to win by 13 in the SEC. Like that's
probably what the line will be.
That's what it's supposed to be. So I'm rooting for like a 72-60 win. Something like that. Like
72 to 60 or 70 to 60?
72 to 60 is kind of my prediction. I think that's what's going to happen, and much needed. Very, very much looking forward to that. Well, do you want to like score prediction or?
Yeah, I'll throw a score up there. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go low on the score because I think Kentucky wins, but they might score 65 points, kind of like what they did against Tennessee, and it'll just be kind of a similar type thing where just Georgia's not very good. And Tennessee obviously didn't have a very good game, regardless of how well Kentucky played on defense. Like Tennessee just missed a bunch of shots, and they missed it. I mean, Zakai Ziegler, the guy, I don't know if he had the yips or something, but he was just missing layups. Like he heard Jacob Toppin 10 feet behind him, and that was enough for him to miss.
That was unbelievable. I mean, he was like looking, like waiting for him to pin his shot, and it's like, please, for the love of God, don't block me.
It almost felt like Tennessee came into that game with more pressure on them than Kentucky did. Kentucky played more freely and more loosely, and Tennessee definitely kind of crunched up a little bit on themselves. So I think Georgia will come in feeling like they have nothing to lose type deal. So it wouldn't shock me if Georgia kind of got off to a hot start too, and then Kentucky has to fend them off kind of down the stretch there, and it still ends up being a 10-point win and maybe closer than we would hope for. But I'll say 65 to 53.
Love it. Let's go on and get out of here because I need to go see Ian Jackson and Justin Edwards play. Let's get out of here. Where can fans find your work?
You can find me, as always, at a beautiful website called Kentucky Sports Radio, or you can follow me on Twitter at ZGeoghegan, KSR. Geoghegan is spelled Geoghegan.
As you can see right there.
Geoghegan.
There.
Zack Geoghegan.
Yep.
Zach with a K.
Yeah.
A lot of people are really good at spelling Geoghegan, but Zach is the one that trips them up sometimes. So
interesting. You find my work on Twitter at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Reach out to me via email, jpilgrim@KentuckySportsRadio.com. Appreciate all of our comments. I mean, goodness gracious, we had hundreds of them in here. It was a nice little conversation with the fans. We went on longer than I think we ever have while doing these live ones. So appreciate everybody's tuning in and listening to our nonsense for a little while. We will have a post Ian Jackson commitment episode ready to go. I'm trying to decide if we want to go live for that or have it pre-recorded. Not 100% sure about that one, but we'll definitely have one way or the other. Very much looking forward to that. Let's get out of here. We'll see you guys tomorrow.